Moving on to panel 3, 2030 Global Goals, Achieving the SDG Goals by 2030, Insights, Strategies, and Implementation. Is the world on track to meet the SDG goals by 2030? We're about to find out. This next panel is going to go more into detail about where we are in the world and what everyone's role is and what part of their initiatives are helping towards this goal. According to the latest reports, the world is not on track to reach these goals because of many factors, of course, which include the setback of the pandemic that has stalled progress. But how can we get back on track and renew our commitment? Ideagen is committed to connecting the dots to achieve the Sustainable Developmental Goals. And in addition to the SDGs, the following panel will provide the insights from a cross-sector lens and strategies working towards achieving these goals by 2030 as the clock ticks just 7.5 years away. For more than 2 decades, companies have come under increasing pressure to incorporate environmental sustainability goals in their businesses. An increasing body of evidence is indicating that companies can do both good and well financially by contributing to a record number of companies setting out on their own ESG journeys. Please welcome the moderator of this panel, Ideagen Global CEO George Sifakis.
Hello, everyone. It's an incredible pleasure to be here live at ACS Athens. Our incredible hosts and partners in this event today focused on connecting the dots as we head toward 2030. A few short years ago, we were on the runway to 2030. And then, boom, a pandemic hit. And who would have thought that in such a short period of time, the entire planet would experience the same exact issues, lockdowns, etc. And yet here we are to talk about progress, to talk about connecting the dots, and to talk about companies like Microsoft, for example, represented here today, that are making a difference to achieve these goals by 2030. It's a tremendous commitment and achievement when you're thinking about creating awareness on the global goals of the United Nations. Today we have with us an incredible panel, starting with Telemachos Moraitis. Telemachos, welcome from Microsoft.
Thank you, George. Happy to be here.
We have with us as well Maria Loy, star of the reality show Life of Loy. She is also an incoming professor at UC Davis. And also Bill Ritzy Donahue. Bill, welcome as well.
Thank you,
from
George.
Gavini. Bill is changing the world in the consulting world with defense contracting in the United States. Not least of which, Panagiotis Zikos, CEO of Otis here in Greece. Welcome, Panagiotis.
Nice to be here with you, George.
And for those of you in the United States, to hear this name, it's a Greek name, George Apostolopoulos. George is a consultant who has worked with some of the world's leading companies, including Amway and Coca-Cola, among so many others. George, welcome.
Nice to be here, George. Thank you.
As a point of privilege, we're presented globally by Microsoft at Ideagen. I'd like to start with you, Telemachos, with the work, the absolutely incredible work that we see Microsoft is doing. Could you give us an example today for our global audience and those assembled here on what Microsoft is doing in terms of utilizing this innovative technology to address so many complex problems across the planet? And I would also like for you to mention your recent recognition in Ukraine.
Right. Thank you very much, George. And as I said, very happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation to this panel with esteemed co-speakers. As you said, Microsoft is doing a lot, but I will not just focus to what Microsoft is doing. It has been a common ground today that we're living in very turbulent times. And you mentioned, for example, the pandemic that broke out in 2019. And as if that wasn't enough, we're now up against a climate crisis, an energy crisis, an inflationary economy. And as if these were not enough, we have a full-blown war in Ukraine. Now, usually in these times, and it's actually very normal, organizations and people alike are seeking to find solutions to tackle these challenges. And I would argue that technology offers the best tools, actually, right now to weather the headwinds that we are up against. I'm saying that, and now I would like to refer to what you also said about Ukraine. If you ask the Ministry of Digital Transformation in Ukraine, what was the key point that turned the wave around in Ukraine and allowed them, let's say, to confront the attacks from Russia, not only the kinetic attacks, but also the immense cyber attacks? That was the point that they understood, and they turned to big tech companies such as Microsoft, but not only Microsoft, and were able to deploy very, very modern tools to continue their operations. 1 month into the war, I was receiving emails, and by the way, I'm saying this because in my role, I'm covering also Ukraine. So I was receiving emails asking me, what is the status with the Ukrainian government? Are they operational? And yes, they were. Not only 1 month, but until now, they have managed to be operational because they use the modern digital tools available out there to continue their work. And of course, also, they used these tools to confront the immense cyber attacks from Russia. These were unprecedented times in terms of cybersecurity. Now, I would like to turn to this discussion to some more, let's say, a more normal environment, a more normal context. Because, Ukraine, there's a war there, it's a bit of extreme. There's also the aspect of business and what business are doing in terms of confronting these challenges. And again, I would say that digital technology here offers the best solutions. And why is that? Because in a world that we live in, where various resources are becoming more scarce and more scarce, the technology is the only solution that can scale up. You can work longer, you can work harder, but there is a ceiling on that. Technology is the best scalable solution. I would like to give you some examples of what Microsoft is doing to confront the aforementioned challenges. Of course, we do not have the time to go through all of them, and I would like to focus on what we're doing to prevent the climate crisis, the environmental crisis. Now, we work on 2 levels in that front. First, internally, where we announced very ambitious goals to become zero waste, carbon negative, and water positive by 2030. And even more, by 2050, Microsoft is aiming at removing all historic emissions that were ever produced since day one of our operations. You can understand how important that is. I will give you an example that recently we announced that our data center in in Sweden is running on 100% renewable energy. And we are producing zero waste by either recycling or repurposing materials that we move out from our infrastructure. Now, on an external level, what we do is that we provide the tools to organizations and people that have embarked or are continuing their sustainability journey to succeed on it. And we think that the most important aspect in this, and I would refer also and quote Dr. Papasinopoulou, I hope that I pronounced the name correctly, who referred to Pythagoras, who said that you cannot measure, what you cannot measure, you don't know. It's exactly what the digital tools are providing. Knowledge, data about what we're doing and what the measures that we're taking result to, so that we improve our actions in tackling these problems. In closing, I would say that overall digital technology, it's not about only business growth. It's about preserving and protecting fundamental human rights and needs.
That's right, Telemachos. And I think we've also heard the saying, what gets measured gets done, right? So it's all part of this larger effort to understand the mountains of data that are coming at us, individually, as a company, and as a society across the planet. Critically important to understand these things. Thank you for that description. Maria, you grew up in this great country of Greece, and you've spent a lot of time in the United States. You have an incredible brand that you've built. I'd like to ask you, as we look at the key qualities for leadership, how would you say, and what would you say the key qualities of leadership are? What is it? What are those key qualities that every leader, in your opinion, should espouse to be successful?
Well, first of all, I have to say that I'm not a professor. And then I have a good show on PBS, and it's The Life of Lloyd, like you said, which actually I teach. And I teach also in universities, like for 3 days, but I'm not a professor. Okay? Like in August, I'm going to teach at UC Davis. So, and I'm very proud of it. And because I want to change all what these children, like for me, everything children over there. So what do they eat? And so leadership, it's very easy for me. Tell them that they have to take decisions. You have to show them the way, and as they say in America, lead by example. That's what I believe.
Incredible. So lead by example. Okay. So leadership. So Bill Ritzy Donahue from Gavini, a West Point graduate, I might add. West Point, most of you are familiar with, in the great state of New York. Bill, here we are in Athens, Greece, at ACS Athens, and you're at Gavini, a leading government contractor for tech, working closely with the defense industry. What and how does decision science and the optimization of it help to solve critical issues across society? I mean, you can imagine that those watching across the planet, watching this piece across the planet, will be listening intently to what you have to say. What is the answer to that question?
Well, thank you very much, George. And I have to say, being here in the cradle of Western civilization is humbling. And to be asked that question of how do you make decisions, well, the Greeks have been trying to philosophize that for thousands of years. So, first of all, I would say it's already been mentioned several times. We take a little bit of a different approach. What you measure, you can manage, you can make decisions on. We say, in God we trust, all others bring your data.
Can you repeat that again?
In God we trust, all others bring your data.
Good one.
So what we try to do is take the objective, the goal, the outcome that is trying to be decided, get clean data. So the fact of the matter is we are overwhelmed with data. You can go in your pocket right now and have more data than we've ever had in history in just your little hand. What do you do with the data? How do you make it relevant to what you are trying to decide? And then give yourselves an iterative approach to it. You're never going to be right the first time. It's not a game show if you got the right answer. It's improving. It's getting better. It's measuring that improvement. It's understanding where you are. We call it in the military an OODA loop: observe, orient, decide, and act. So understand where you are, orient to what your goal is, decide, act, and then do it again, and then do it again, and do it again. And the quicker you can do that, the more agile you are, as we learned in the last panel, the better you'll get. And you keep measuring that and sharing that with others so they can do the same thing. And that's the way these improvements happen, and they always do. And I just have to say, I see several members of the military in the audience. I thank you for your service to your country. I appreciate that.
Bill, thank you so very much. What incredible, incredible insights. Shifting a bit, for those of you, for those 2 billion people, some of which are in this room and watching today, that use an elevator. The 2 billion people per day that use an elevator, we owe a debt of gratitude to Otis Elevator, represented here by the CEO here in Greece. Panagiotis Sikos. Panagiotis, welcome.
Nice to be here, George.
2 billion people a day.
Huge number. China.
It's a big number. Population of China, as you mentioned.
Exactly.
And you have a degree in computer science, ironically. Makes sense. And you are also an expert, let's say, in blockchain technologies.
Thank you for that.
How has this background, how has this computer science, blockchain background helped you with your success at Otis?
Okay, first, let's consider the environment. You mentioned the pandemic. The pandemic taught us that things can be done in a different way. We realized that the correlation between physical and digital somehow can exist. We learned ourselves to be physically present in a digital environment. We're at home, cooking, attending a workshop for the job, and also taking care of our children who are at the same time attending a remote class. So digital became part of our life. And the funny thing is that we got so easily used to it that eventually it's in our nature. This is what I got. So now we're discussing about metaverse and all these nice things, and we think that metaverse is something that will come in the future. We live in a kind of metaverse even nowadays. I'm saying that because I want to mention that so our world has become digital. So being in a digital world, if you have the proper tools to accommodate this digital mentality, it helps you evolve faster. So the computer science background is vital for us. It's vital for me. But even for Otis, because for most people here, and the ones who are watching us, they know that the elevator is a black box that goes up and down. If it goes faster, we're better. So the elevator has changed a lot in the last years, the last 20 years, let's say. So it's not the last 2 months. We have tons of data, as mentioned, collected by an elevator. We have Internet of Things technology. So we have digital sensors that collect data from the elevator in order for us to produce business intelligence analytics and adjust the way the elevator operates to the needs of a building. Because every building does not have the same needs. If I have a small block of flats, I need a very simple, a very small, simple in the mentality elevator. But if I have a skyscraper, if I have a high-rise building, like in the US or all around the world, and hopefully soon in Greece at the Elliniko project, then you need to have proper elevators that will produce the least energy, that they will require the least energy to go up and down, that they will be able to produce energy at specific movements of the elevator, because even if it sounds crazy, the elevator does not always consume energy to move. When it moves up or down, depending on the weight it carries, it can just move and produce energy at the same time, the same way like an electric car recharges its batteries when we press on the brakes. So the elevator became digital. So if you have a computer science background for a digital elevator, then you can understand how it operates. It is not a black box anymore. Everything becomes transparent. And blockchain, to come to the final part of the question, was something crazy that I got up one day 3 years ago in 2018, and I said, okay, I want to learn blockchain. I was too old to learn new things, but I studied at MIT remotely, and I took a small master's for blockchain. So what do we do with blockchain? The basic idea of blockchain is transparency of data. Is the fact that if you store something in the blockchain database, it becomes fully transparent in the sense that nobody can change that. So what do we do now? We're creating services in Greece. This is pioneered in Greece. We're creating services for our customers so that every maintenance activity done by our mechanics is stored in the blockchain database. So when the customer wants to see what has been done, but in a fully transparent way, not being manipulated by Otis or by anybody else, he just sees the results, the data inside this database. So this enhances the loyalty with our customers through a digital way of thinking.
You know, so fascinating to have you on this panel with Bill, Maria, and Telemachos, and of course George, and to think that technology can be used for the transparency piece. Tech for good, as they say. We've heard that a lot, right? Tech for good. And leadership is also something that can be and should be used for good. George, you've worked with the biggest companies in the world. You advise them, you give them advice on how to proceed and how to do good. What has been your big takeaway from that?
I was listening carefully to what Telemachos and Panagiotis were saying, mostly about how the technology of the great company of Microsoft has acted as a catalyst to doing good. And then how blockchain technology helps transparency. In my opinion, it all depends on having the right visionary, the right leader to build on the abilities that technology offers today, which was not present maybe a few years back. So you mentioned I've been doing consulting. I like to say I've been working with people. And that's where the essence of things is. Having the right people, being offered the right tools that will help them do the right thing. But again, it depends on the people. And what a good leader is, in my opinion, is a leader that prepares his people or her people and then entrusts on them to do the good thing. And like Mrs. Loy said, do it by example, lead by example. I love the term servant leadership. I used to work for a Scandinavian company, a Danish company. What I loved about them is that the org chart was upside down. I was the head of the team, and I was at the bottom. So,
well, and that brings up a good point, because you see it with the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations, we talked about the runway. So in 2020, in January of 2020, we were looking at a 10-year, decade-long runway to achieving these global goals of the UN. 10 years. In March of 2020, we know what happened. And here we are several years later, and have we been set back? Have we been brought forth or closer to achieving the goals? I think what the pandemic brought was a big, bright light, perhaps, on a lot of inequality across the world. Mm-hmm. That's for sure. And with that, the ability to say, there it is, let's address it. How about that? Just like in America, in the United States of America, we have a dropout problem. And the late, great General Colin Powell said, let's find out where the dropout is happening. What schools is it happening from? With an organization called America's Promise. They identified the 1,000 high schools where over 95% of the dropouts were coming from, and said, let's put the resources there. But how did they do that, ladies and gentlemen? They measured. And that's exactly what you're talking about here, is being able to measure what it is that we need to address. And how can you do it without having a big, bright light shining on the inequality, whatever that may be, and wherever that may be? And so that's where companies like Microsoft or Otis or Govini or Maria, with all of the work that you do across the world, and George, in your consulting, you can take that forth. And so I'd like to point this question to Bill. Bill, you talked about decision science, right? Decision science. How is that decision science impacting the achievement of the global goals of the United Nations?
So decision science is a tool, a process like anything else. And I love the fact that you brought up people. It's a tool and an implement for people to use. Technology, like Microsoft does a great job providing, connects people. Those tools give those people who have intellect and knowledge and understanding the ability to scale that out faster and go through more iterations than they possibly could do manually. And that's what decision science is in essence doing. It's taking artificial intelligence and machine language and processing all of the billions of records of data that come across these major initiatives to give you shorter decision cycles, to make faster decisions, see what the result is, and be able to adjust faster. Agility, again. So when you apply that to any objective, you get faster results that then can propagate to others and share across the globe while being able to adapt for that specific environment that may be a little bit different than another place in the world. So it's that decision science allows you to, what we call a taxonomy, take that landscape and adjust quickly with the right data. Again, back to need the right data.
Amazing. And what I personally love about the global goals, again, of the United Nations is that they're a unifier. And they're a unifier because when you saw those 193 member states come together, imagine this, 193 member states, including the United States of America, coming together and said, yes, this is important. These 17 goals are important. And we have goal number 2, Maria. Goal number 2, zero hunger. How about that for a goal? Zero hunger. We're looking at now a very tall task, zero hunger. We had our friend and colleague, Atul Tandon from Opportunity International come in, and he said, imagine the day, and hold on for a second, imagine a day when everyone can go to bed with a full stomach. Meaning, there are people right now that are going to bed today, tonight, without a full stomach. How disconcerting is that? And Maria, you're at the front end of this because you are looking at increasing what you call the quality of what we eat. How can we address the goals with the quality in what we eat?
First of all, we have to check the waste of the food that we eat. Okay, we have at least to cut it in half right now. We have to have quality food. That means that it's easier for us, you know, less diseases, less that, less hospital, all of this. But in order to feed these people, because not everyone can do what we're talking now, you have to find food. And for me, and being Greek actually, the aquaculture is the way to go. We have to expand into the sea. That's the solution for me, to feed all these people. And it will be easier for everyone. And it's easier. We see it right now. We just have to go back to see how they used to live, what they used to eat. And we can do it. Aquaculture.
Aquaculture. Incredible. So looking back to solve the problems of the future. Fascinating. And there's only one person that can really make people understand that, and that's you, Maria. For sure. Dilemma, back to you. I'd like to ask you the question, you know, we all hear about AI. Everyone talks about AI, we can help drill down your data, we can figure out, and solve so many of the world's solutions. But before we get to AI, I find it incredibly inspiring that your CEO, Satya Nadella, leads with absolute empathy.
He does.
Empathy is a word that I love because it assumes that I will first, before I understand the issue, will walk in your shoes for a moment. That's empathy, right? I understand. I become you for a moment and say, okay, now I understand. And just a note on this. What you've done, what he's led with, Satya, with helping those that have disabilities. In terms of that empathy, you have an Xbox. How about having and allowing kids that have a disability to be able to use the Xbox or access the computer or software, et cetera? AI, tell us your perspective on how AI will change the world.
Yeah, thank you very much for this question, George. Actually, it's a very good one. I would like to begin by, stating or actually making a more generic comment, which is that, AI, of course, it's the technology of the future. It can provide many opportunities for growth, but we need to be mindful, and we need, of course, to put the right regulation in place. So overall, I would say that we need a trustworthy AI. And working for Microsoft, one thing that has been made very clear to me is that we truly are working to create AI systems that are trustworthy. And we call that responsible AI. And we have even developed certain principles by which we abide to ensure that these systems are trustworthy. I'll name them very briefly. It's fairness, it's accountability, inclusiveness, safety and reliability, privacy and security, and transparency. These are the main principles by which we run all our development in AI. Now, I think it will be very helpful for everyone here to understand what AI can do if we could offer some tangible examples. In Microsoft, back in 2017, we created this program that's called AI for Good. And it has many, many projects underneath. Of course, I could go on and on talking about how many applications AI can have. I'll try to give some indicative examples. First of all, we have this project that's called AI for Humanitarian Action. And through that program, we collaborated with the International Red Cross. Now, the International Red Cross, for those who don't know, has a platform that helps people, especially migrants, to reunite with their families. Before technology was applied, this process could take up to a decade or even more. So you can understand that this was not very, very efficient. Now, moving to 2021, we collaborated with the Red Cross and we applied AI to make their platform more efficient. So now it takes almost 2 years for people to find their families back at home and reunite with them. I think this is a very powerful story of how technology can help actual human needs and be human-centric. The second application of AI is with respect to preserving cultural heritage. And I would like to refer to this example because it is very close to my heart. I've been involved in this project because it concerns ancient Olympia. It is a project that was launched back in November 2021. It's an in-kind sponsorship to the Greek state, to the Hellenic government. And what it entails is a threefold solution that digitally preserves ancient Olympia. I would call everyone and encourage you to visit Athens Olympic Museum, where the HoloLens installation for ancient Olympia is situated. And there you can see ancient Olympia being digitally revived in front of you. Or alternatively, you can download the mobile app, Olympia Common Grounds, and you can see, you can tour around ancient Olympia as it was 2,000 years ago. And the third example, again from Greece, has to do with helping people with disabilities. We launched a program, it's called Extra Milers, and what is essentially about is offering accessible tourism to people with disabilities. So it is a database that contains information about all areas around Greece and whether they, in fact, offer the proper infrastructure for people with disabilities. So they can go there and visit the places that they're friendly to them. Again, I would like to close by stating an overarching principle around all these solutions, which is that no one should be left behind. We're talking about technology proliferation in our times, but we need to make sure that we take this leap all together, leaving no one behind.
And that's incredible, and I know the mission statement, the simple byline is to empower every person on the planet to do more, and it sounds like it's exactly what, from Satya's leadership all the way down, everyone's doing at Microsoft, which is really great. I'd like to dig in deeper into you, Panayotis, for a moment, and you started as a service manager at Otis Elevator. Imagine you started as a service manager, and today you sit on this stage as the CEO. Can you tell our global audience what was that journey like, and what type of impact and leadership do you see in the future?
I just killed the previous guy, so it was easy. Okay, in order to evolve in your career, it's not one or two things to do. You have to follow a series of actions to make it achievable. So definitely it's hard work. Definitely you have to trust your people. You have to create a strong team. You have to be able to criticize yourself, because you start from that. You do your self-criticism and you say, okay, which are my weak points? What do I have to improve in order for me to become a better person before starting affecting, as consultants say, the others as a leader? So for me, it was a series of actions, believing in my power, in my hard work, having the trust that if you are giving your best self in something, eventually you will be awarded. And it will not take a lifetime to happen. Because as I heard, I don't remember from whom, in 2019, the previous Ideagen meeting here in the summit here, somebody told me after my presentation, he liked the presentation, he told me, very good presentation, it's very good that you have a good talent, and now you have become a CEO, an executive in the company, not a CEO back then. So it's very good that your talent has been awarded, because he told me many people do not see their talent being awarded in their lifetime, and this is very disappointing for them. So definitely, you need some luck. It's not done by luck, but you need some luck at some point in your career. But for me, because you mentioned the kind of leader, I heard about the leading by example. I love this. I love it. It's very good. But for me, a leader does not only have to lead by example, because as I mentioned, I have some weak points. So I have formed a team, and some members in the team are better than me in some areas, because they know it better. I'm not going to cannibalize them. I'm not going to be them, I'm the boss. Give me your help, support me, because your support will eventually support the full company. So for me, it's not just leading by example. It's also, as we say, the inspirational leader. The leader who inspires people to base on their power and do the small or large things that will change the whole company. So for me, inspiring people is very important. And when I became the leader, it took me some time to realize that you inspire people even if you want or you don't want. You inspire people from the moment you get into the office. Inspiration can be in a good way or in a bad way. And the problem is that the good things in your people's mind, they're multiplied by 10. Bad ones are by 1,000. So you have to inspire people, you have to inspire by being a good leader, and you have always to be very careful of these small things that may be indifferent for you, but may have a strong impact on other persons. So for me, inspiring is the most important part of the leadership.
You know, that reminds me, we've heard a few proverbs during this Global Impact Summit, and I'd like to bring one up myself. They say that if you'd like to go fast, go alone, and if you want to go far, go together. And I personally like that, because this is what we're talking about here. This is a group of folks that are leading within their companies and helping to change the world. And I'd like to ask this question to all of you. Why do you believe that cross-sector collaboration, public-private partnerships, and all of that, as we heard in a briefing this morning here in Athens, why is that so important? Why does the UN today talk about the importance of speaking to the private sector and vice versa? Why is this so important, and why is it so important in your companies?
I'll start with this one. Synergy, which is a great Greek word, is displayed as 1 + 1 = more than 2. Different sectors, different specialties have unique characteristics that the other part may not have. So bringing each one's specialty together will generate the multiple result that we're looking for. Simple as that.
Well said. Maria.
He said it all.
Oh.
But really, it's exactly synergia. That's what we need. We need to love each other, first of all, because if we don't like each other, we cannot create a community, and that's not good. And I think we have to have empathy, of course, like you said, who said the word empathy that George likes. We have to see what the cultures, what they have difference, and then we could create goals together, and we'll see what it not divides us, like bring us together.
I love it. And right back to you, Maria, again. You combine what you like to say, innovation, with your culinary work. And a plug for your restaurant in New York, one of the best in the world, Greek restaurants. Amazing. You combine this innovation with tradition through your culinary work, as well as in all of the literature you've published. What is that secret?
It's the same secret that my grandmother had. Quality and truth to the ingredients, and that's what I am doing. I never left, the way of cooking that my grandmother did. Of course, the cooking paths today, they're different, and the only thing that we combine is like we got Microsoft tablets, so we can write those books. We can share our knowledge. That's what's the difference. But in taste, you cannot set it through a tablet yet. So you have to make it, and that's what is a combination.
Only Maria could put it together so succinctly. And I'd like to say, one of the questions I've asked to hundreds, if not thousands of people in interviews just like this is really special to me because I think it brings out the unique qualities of leadership. And I'd like to ask each of you to answer this and not to copy each other. So you're not gonna, we're not going to put you in a soundproof booth, but I'm going to ask first, Dilemoche, what are the 3 key lessons you have learned that have the potential to change the world? It's an unfair advantage for the rest of them because now they know the question. But what are those 3 lessons you've learned that have the potential to change the world?
So I'm already 4 years with the company, and it's been a challenging and fruitful experience, let's say. And you get to have a sneak preview, let's say, of what the world will look like in 10, 20 years from now. There are many challenges, and I would say that the first would be, sorry, can you repeat the question? Because I think I've missed.
What are the 3 key lessons you've learned
Right.
that have the potential to change the world?
So I would say that, first of all, and sorry to repeat something that has been already said, this is one of the core values that our company has, is empathy. I think moving forward, this value will play an even more important role, not only because of the challenges that we face, but because also of the environment that we are called to work. For example, in Microsoft, we have already established a hybrid work environment. This is, for some people, it's a new experience. It's not easy to cope with. You have, for example, you're working from home or you're working from another state, and you don't have this in-person contact and communication with your manager, with your peers, which can sometimes create some problems and some miscommunication. So for everyone to be able to put themselves to the other people's shoes is essential for good teamwork and for good results. So I think empathy is the first lesson. The second thing is that you never cease to learn. Lifelong learning is essential moving forward again. We're talking about reskilling, upskilling. I just have a number in my mind, and I will share it with you. We have estimated that by 2025, there's going to be a need for, there's going to be open 3.5 million jobs in cybersecurity alone. This is a staggering number, and of course, right now, we don't have the the resources. We don't have the people that are skilled to cover these positions. So, as we said, I think that was something that was mentioned in a previous panel. What will happen with AI? It will cancel some jobs, it will cancel some professions, but new jobs will arise. So being able to constantly learn will be essential for, for us people, everyone, to contribute to our society, to our economy overall. And the third lesson, if I can go to thus far, would be to stay humble. I cannot stress it enough, and this is something that it's part of also of Microsoft's culture. It doesn't really matter what you do and how much you do. I mean, I don't think that anyone should feel this sense of uniqueness. We're part of the same, let's say, ecosystem. And as you said, we cannot reach far if we don't go together. So we should stay humble, always seeking for advice, always seeking to learn more, always, be in the position to adjust.
Incredible. Maria.
Well, my father told me that I have to have philotimo. And I'm glad that I'm here and I don't need to explain the word philotimo. So I was very lucky to have my grandfather who taught me all what I teach today to other kids about the well-being. And he told me, one day you will change the world, one healthy bite at a time.
You do need to describe philotimo for those across the world that are watching it. How would you define it?
Well, for me, it's to care about the others, how much you care about yourself, respect, and do nice things about the society. And you will become a person with philotimo.
Thank you. Bill.
So 3, I can't have like 30. So 3, I actually was going to say respect right away, so you stole that from me. I wish I knew philotimo before. Now I do. Humility to me is the core of leadership, and it's been said many, many times here. Leadership is action, not position. That is how I say it. And that means it's not positional. It's not what role you have in the organization. It's not your title. It's not your CV. It's your drive, your passion, your desire to make a difference. That leadership is needed, period, at every level, for every person. We need to understand where we are and where we're going. And while we have big, audacious goals, have measurable, short-term accomplishment towards them. So we don't lose that momentum, because what will frequently happen in any organization is you get off and going, and the first thing that normally happens is it gets worse, because you're making a change. People aren't used to it. People aren't ready for it. They will fight you. They want to know where they fit in this new world. So be ready for that and adjust for that to bring everybody along, and not just figure some of them aren't just going to get it. They will. They just need time. And then lastly, it is complete ability to connect. And it is global. There's different ways of doing it, even within the US, there's massively different ways of doing it. When I'm working with the military, it's a completely different connection than when I'm working with people who are doing solar projects, and when I'm working with people who are doing agriculture projects, medical projects. All of them have their own culture, their own language, their own ways of measuring accomplishment and performance. So you've got to be able to adjust to all 3 of those to really make long-term change.
Thank you, Bill. Panagiotis.
Before going to the 3 lessons, I'd like to say, to describe an experience last Friday, because this was the strongest lesson in my 15 years career in Notice. So I had a visit last Friday from a blind person who is the president of Blind Persons in Greece, and he wanted to see me for a project for accessibility of handicapped mainly blind persons, at the metro stations. So he's a lawyer. He's part of the board of directors of the Legal School of Athens, so he's a strong person. Not at all complex about being blind. Imagine that when he came in my office, I told him, so they offer you a coffee? He told me, why? To open the eyes, as we say in Greece, na nix to mati. Okay, so he was a very nice guy. So, but he described me his daily life. He has no complex at all. He has not the attitude of, I'm a handicapped person, I have to spend my whole life at home. But he described me the daily issues that affect his daily life that are totally indifferent for us. We don't care. We don't care where the exit is. We do not care how am I going to leave this building, because it's pretty obvious for me. But for a blind person, or a handicapped person in general, it's not that easy. So the world is not made for all. We're discussing about the 17 goals, but inside there I do not see one goal for the handicapped persons. I see something about equality, but it's more like a gender part, a gender equality, less than a handicapped person. So for me, one lesson would be to create a better world for these handicapped persons, to make the accessibility, not just in buildings, but in everywhere. As I heard from Microsoft, it's a very good idea for a handicapped person to be able to see which buildings, where I want to go, which ones support a handicapped person. But okay, this is good, but what happens with the other buildings? So I'm excluded from the other buildings, I cannot visit them. So we need to make the world a more approachable place, even for handicapped persons. Just this, before going to the 3 lessons. For me, the 3 lessons are totally combined with today's activity. It's embrace your environment, where you live in this environment. Serve your society, because it's the place you have selected to grow up your children. And select your governance model for your country, for your company, for your family, that supports your ethical principles. So these are the 3 lessons. And ironically, it's the ESG letters. So this is the long-term vision for me. All other things, P&L, profits, revenues, etc., are just for the next quarter, nothing more.
Thank you, Panagiotis. Powerful.
I'm thinking about it a little differently. First of all, I'm the unlucky one, because with such a panel, there's nothing left for me to say. But I would like to say that number 1 for me is raise the awareness. We talk about the 17 goals. I'm not sure, I think Mr. Kostopoulos referred to it before with a question about the media. How sure are we that the average individual out there is aware of those goals, of those priorities? So number 1 is we need to do something to raise or force even the awareness. I'll use an example. I've been working with a great family company for the last couple of years. And I was sitting with the head of procurement of a major hotel complex in Greece, which has actually kind of changed the scenery. I don't want to call names. And we were talking about cutting a deal. And the lady that I was sitting across the table from asked me if the delivery trucks of the company are Euro 6. I was close to not having a clue of what it was. Luckily, my late dad used to own a transportation company, so I was aware. Euro 6 means that you leave 0 carbon print. So what are they doing? They're raising the awareness, I'll put it nicely, to their counterparts that they have to comply with such things, which I found it as a great initiative, and that's why I'm referring to it. Second is, you all referred to it, empathy. Okay, now we know we need to care. And the third one, which is probably stuck between the buzzwords that we all use, is do something. I think we can use more doers.
For our global audience, I'd like to point out and pivot from what we just heard from these amazing individuals from across the planet that Ideagen is focused on creating awareness for those 17 global goals of the United Nations that are so critically important, and that again, I've said it during this summit, and I'll say it again, unanimously agreed to by all 193 member states of the United Nations in 2015, including the United States of America. There's unanimity there. And what we did in 2021 is we reached over 100 million people, always talking about the global goals of the United Nations. Here at this summit today, at the amazing institution which is ACS Athens, led by our good friend and great leader, Peggy Polonis, along with also our good friends who joined us today from Ireland, Ambassador Angelos Pangratis. Ambassador Pangratis, who was the EU ambassador to the United States and to the WTO, among so many other things. Along with the American Hellenic Institute and Nick Largakis, who have led on the rule of law and the issue of the rule of law, which, by the way, is also one of the 17 goals, also critically important to note. And then, of course, we're presented globally by Microsoft. We're presented globally by Microsoft because we agree and we believe that Microsoft is leading with what we talked about, with empathy, and that we share in the Greek word, and we share in the ethos of this company, and the empathy, and all of the other superlatives that we could use today to be able to say, we're happy to be here. Telemachos, Maria, Bill, Panayotis, George, thank you so very much. The final announcement is, if we can pull up the final slide, closing this summit today, which is, we will be in Corfu in 2030 for the Corfu 2030 Summit on July 20th, 2023. We'll see you all there. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, everyone. That concludes the Ideagen Global Impact Summit 2022. And we leave you with that message. Together we can all succeed. And we are the caretakers of this magnificent planet Earth and each other. So be kind, mindful, respectful, responsible, and collaborative. Thank you. We'll see you in Corfu.
Thank you, sir.
Anthony, thank you.
Εγώ ευχαριστώ, Γιώργο. Πολύ ωραίο.
Bill?
Opa.